The last 42 years of marriage have been an extraordinary adventure of discovery and fun, as well as challenges. As we said, Nikki and I met as teenagers and got married aged 21 and 22.
When we'd been married for a year, we bought a 16-year-old sports car very cheaply and decided to drive out to Greece and back for our summer holidays, a round trip of over 6,000 miles. It was an amazing journey, but it was also one of the most challenging times we'd had in our marriage. Obviously, we got tired and some of the roads were really scary. But the main challenge was around our different expectations. My idea was to spend as little money as possible and generally to find somewhere to sleep in a field and live off bread and cheese.
Whereas my idea was that occasionally we would stay in a cheap hotel and every so often have a decent meal. Well, neither of us were very good at talking about our own expectations. My response, if things weren't going the way I wanted, was to get cross and resentful and then go into a mood.
And one day, Scylla completely lost it with me. And so we decided to find a cheap hotel, only to discover that the bed had fleas, which didn't help at all.
Our trip to Greece was very formative. We learnt a lot about marriage and a lot about each other. And that journey of discovery has continued to this day. Marriage provides us with one of life's greatest opportunities and one of its greatest challenges. The opportunity to build the most intimate of relationships, the benefits of which go way beyond ourselves. And the challenge to go on learning what it means to love another person, to look beyond our own needs, to go on finding out what's important to our partner, and then make adjustments in our own behaviour.
I don't know if you've ever tried to row a boat with your partner. It was one of the first things Scylla and I did when we met as teenagers on holiday, and we weren't very good at it. The main problem was we were trying to prove to each other who was the better rower. Both of us were pulling our hardest on the oars, but our strokes were different lengths, so we were lurching from side to side. And in addition, we weren't rowing in time, and the oars kept clashing. It was hard work, and the boat didn't make much progress through the water. It was only when we stopped being so competitive and we started matching our strokes and pulling in time with each other that suddenly we had that amazing feeling of getting into a rhythm, and the boat started to glide through the water. In marriage, we have to work through problems together, with both of us asking ourselves, are there ways that I need to change for the sake of our partnership?
We're going to look at 4 requirements if we're to work together as a team in marriage. First, we need to show our appreciation for each other on a daily basis.
Generally, when we start going out, we're very aware of what we love about our partner. But all too easily, once we're married, we can start to focus on each other's weaknesses.
And one of the things that first attracted me to Nicky was his optimism. However, a little way into our marriage, I realised that he has an extraordinary tendency to be very over-optimistic. Now, Nicky is very practical and is very good at carpentry and fixing almost anything. And I remember an occasion when we'd been married for about a year, and he started to build some bookshelves in our sitting room. Now, he assured me he would easily get them finished over the weekend. Well, he didn't. And for the next 2 months, every time we wanted to use the sitting room, we had to pick our way through piles of books and bits of wood and move all of Nicky's tools that were strewn around the room, waiting for the next opportunity for him to do a bit more. And it drove me mad. And to this day, Nicky still tells me something he's making or mending won't take him a moment. So I have to remember to express my appreciation to him for his practical skills. And actually, I realise I am so glad I'm married to an optimist rather than a pessimist.
Professor Gladstone Harley decided to spring an impromptu test on his philosophy students, handing out a single sheet of paper to everyone in his lecture hall. To everyone's surprise, there were no questions on the page, just one random mark. Professor Harley then told them, "I want you to write about what you see." When the students had finished, the professor collected in the papers and proceeded to read aloud what each student had written. All of them, without exception, had written about the mark on the page, working hard to describe the significance of its shape and its position on the paper. Professor Harley then said, "Thank you, everyone. Excellent answers from all of you. But what fascinates me is that everyone focused on the mark. Not one of you wrote about the white part of the paper. Then he added, the same happens in our relationships. We so easily focus on the blemishes, rather than on all there is to admire about each other. In marriage, we can tend only to react to our partner's faults and what irritates us. But there's always so much to appreciate about them. The huge white spaces are their personality, their character, their gifts, their passions, all that they are and do.
Over the whole lifetime of a marriage, we'll never fully know everything about our partner. There will always be more to discover and appreciate.
My name is Maki.
And I'm Princey.
We've been married for 8 years plus now, and blessed with 2 lovely daughters. Ours was arranged marriage. It was a bit of discovery on either sides. In the first 3 years of our marriage, things didn't go really good between us, and there was a lot of difference of opinions, different backgrounds that we come from. I was very judgmental about how she was. Always thought I was better than her. And the outside, nobody knew it. Everybody thought we were a perfect couple. But on the inside, there were a lot of different opinions. I kept putting her down. And eventually, it just didn't go well with her. She just broke down in the car. She said, forget it. I don't think this marriage is going to work anymore. When she had said that, I realized that I had really messed it up and really hurt her so much. I had to spend some time completely breaking down my ego, letting it all down. And I said, I need to change.
It was the thing ringing inside my heart all the times. And that day I remember him telling, let's just think about what we can do. Can you give one more chance? And then we just came to a conclusion of making it work.
We'll try again.
Yeah, we'll try.
And I found that she was a stronger one. I started respecting her, started falling in love with her. And I realized, maybe those 3 years I thought she wasn't the right person for me, but I knew at that point in time, nobody would have been better than her. So that made me fall in love with her and started expressing myself.
Literally, I was enjoying that moment. A sudden change and showering of love.
Remember, we were so happy after we connected. For the first time, we danced together. We played some music, we danced together, and
With tears.
with tears of joy. And I think that I would never forget that day. It just changed for us.
The psychologist and relationship expert, Dr. John Gottman, says he can now tell within 5 minutes if a couple's relationship is heading for trouble. He says the key indicator is, are they showing each other appreciation? His advice to couples is, for every 1 critical remark, there needs to be at least 5 positive ones. Constant criticism in a marriage can destroy a person. It will undermine their self-esteem and they can lose their confidence. If a husband or wife is very controlling, they may use criticism to gradually break their partner down to the point where they can hardly function. This is a form of emotional abuse which a relationship can't sustain.
But appreciation does the opposite. It draws out the other person's potential. It builds their self-esteem. Expressing appreciation for our husband or wife needs to become a daily habit, including on those days when we're not feeling like it, when we're feeling stressed or grumpy or irritable.
Nikki and I have noticed a very simple equation. The more appreciation we show to each other, the more appreciative we become of each other.
We hope this first conversation, called Expressing Appreciation, is the most enjoyable of the whole course. We want you to write down 6 things in your journal that you appreciate about your partner. When you've both finished, take it in turns to read out loud to each other what you've put. A second requirement, if we're to work together as a team in marriage, is to let go of unrealistic expectations. In the view of one psychologist and marriage counsellor, people putting unrealistic expectations onto their partner is the principal reason for marriages breaking down today.
Some people come into marriage expecting their partner to love them perfectly and to meet all of their needs. Sometimes that's because they have unmet emotional needs from childhood. Maybe they didn't receive much affirmation or attention.
Or perhaps they weren't loved unconditionally by their parents, and they expect their partner to meet all of these unfulfilled needs from childhood.
And that's putting unrealistic expectations onto them. Their partner can never be the perfect mother or the perfect father that they didn't have, and they certainly can't be the perfect husband or wife. Alongside appreciating our partner's qualities, we have to accept their flaws. We have to take them as they are rather than as we would like them to be. If we expect perfection, we'll never be satisfied.
We live in a consumer society where we're used to changing something when we don't like it, and a throwaway society, if you like. But more than that, we live in a society dominated by social media. And I'll tell you, one characteristic of much of social media is that other people's lives seem perfect. They post their perfect lives for us to watch. And sometimes when we live in a society like that, we think, well, my life isn't like that. And sometimes we look at the person we're with that we once loved very much, and they don't seem as attractive to us. In fact, the things which first attracted us now annoy us. What we used to call strong, we now call stubborn. What we used to call funny, we now call frivolous. And we don't like them or even love them as much as we used to. And we think, I deserve more than this. And we imagine the person we should have married. They're probably out there somewhere now. They're stronger with the children. They're better at DIY. They're better cooks. They're more understanding. They're probably a sexual athlete. These are the people we should have married. And perhaps we leave that person that we had loved once, and we find this new person, and they're all we'd ever wanted for a year or two, but then they begin to dull too. And it doesn't always happen, but I see people bounce from relationship to relationship, looking for this elusive person that will fulfill all their needs. But we'll never find real love like that. Not real love. Real life tends to come by working at a marriage, searching for the good, trying mutually to change what we want to, and sometimes saying, darling, you are not all I want you to be, and I am not all you want me to be, but we have each other, and we will work at this marriage together. Normally, that's the way to find a love that lasts a lifetime.
Putting unrealistic expectations onto our partner will lead to a destructive downward spiral. We start to make demands of each other, and those demands won't be met as no one individual can meet all of our needs. We'll then be disappointed, and disappointment will lead to blame and criticism. This is one area where our Christian faith has made a huge difference to our relationship. When we first met, I think I was looking to Scylla to meet all of my emotional and spiritual needs. And that could easily have led to me making unrealistic demands and the start of a downward spiral. When we both began to look to God, we experienced a new sense of significance and security in our lives and stopped expecting our relationship to provide all of that. So, the second requirement for working as a team is to let go of unrealistic expectations.
A third requirement for working as a team is to be prepared to change. When we were rowing together, Nikki and I both had to be willing to change in order to work as a team and find the same rhythm. And when we did, things went much better. Showing our partner in big ways and small ways that we're prepared to change our behaviour rather than trying to force them to change sends a powerful message of love.
I think one of the things, coming into marriage, we expected every sunset, beautiful. It's going to be perfect, fireplace, dinners every single night, kissing in the rain,
But we didn't have a point of reference. So we go to the movies. We go to what's not real for reference. And then that sets us up for failure.
So we have tension. We're trying to get rid of this tension, and it's not going away. So we've learned, no, tension is always going to be there. How can we minimize the tension? And so we've learned to just minimize some of that friction, but not try to get rid of it, because it won't go away. It's going to be there. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for us that we've learned is that I cannot change Christina. It is, and the more I try to...
That's new for you?
No, it's not new. But it was new, because I think we're always trying to change other people. When we did go to counseling, it was a mirror on ourselves. It was like, what can you do to change you? What are the 3 things that are bothering Christina about me, right? Because I know I could say 1,000 things about her that bother me. But what are the things I do, And I know them like the back of my hand, She doesn't like my cell phone. And so I can work on those things.
You can't control or fix or change, your partner. So let's start there.
Yeah. My dream is I want to be 80 years old, drinking a pina colada in Cancun, with my best friend and with my wife.
Good dream.
That's our hope that we aspire to.
In the conclusion of her book, The Good Marriage, the author Judith Wallerstein writes about her own marriage of over 50 years. I'm aware of the physical changes of aging in my body. My right knee is getting stiff with arthritis. When my husband and I walk together as we do daily, I notice that he has slowed his pace because of my infirmity. When we return home, he usually has some tasks he urgently wants to attend to, and that's fine with me. I know that if he doesn't do them, he'll be unhappy. I'm also aware that he too is less flexible than he used to be, so I postpone conversation until he's finished his work. Marriage is made up of the little things. It's the little things that count, both the good and the bad. We're building a marriage now, just as surely as when we were younger, as surely as when we returned from honeymoon and started our life together. The 1,001 changes in our relationship, in observing each other and adjusting to each other, are no different today, except that we're better at it. We've had a lot of practice. That's what loving is all about. That's what it means to be a partnership working in harmony.
Hi, I'm Icy, and this is Phil, and we met in a pub.
You had gold hair and a nice smile and sparkly eyes.
Yeah, you had dodgy shoes.
There was only one space left in the circle of friends, and it was next to you, so it was...
Yeah.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
I think subconsciously you sort of come together and you don't always realise the bits of your character that you're putting to one side and shedding, because suddenly there's something driving you towards want to make want to make a go of it and make it sort of team thing. Even though that sounds a bit cheesy. When I met you, you had still something called a file of facts and a diary. And, like a date with friends. If I was going out with my mates, it's all very last minute.
Yeah.
Sort of 7:30, you get a call. Should we go here? When? Well, half an hour? Yeah, and we just go. We would, but you'd let me consult my diary and see, that was alien. So I think you learned to be more flexible. And I learned to sort of be a bit more organised in that respect.
Really?
For a fleeting moment, maybe.
A fourth requirement for working as a team is to recognise our common overreactions. We all come into marriage carrying with us influences from our background. Some will be positive, but some will be negative. The negative experiences can cause us to overreact, especially when we're under pressure or when our partner presses a button or touches a raw spot. If we react like the rhino, we're likely to charge. If we're like the hedgehog, we're likely to retreat.
One woman we know, who was repeatedly criticised as a child, overreacted whenever her husband requested her to change any aspect of her behaviour, however small. So when he asked if she could leave the office earlier one day a week to give them more time together, it caused her to become very defensive and made it difficult to have a reasonable discussion about the issue.
A man who was abandoned by a parent when he was a child told us he would overreact whenever his wife turned up a bit late, as it made him feel very unsafe. Thinking back to the start of our marriage, I remember how I could easily overreact by bottling things up if I felt overlooked. My father was a wonderful man. I'm so grateful to him for a secure upbringing and for so much that he gave me. But he was also one of the quietest men I've ever known. He didn't feel the need to speak more than was strictly necessary, and there were all sorts of reasons in his own background for that. And it was only as I started to tell Scylla where I felt insecure or hurt or overlooked, and that took real courage, that she started to affirm me and encourage me more, and it's made a massive difference to me.
Something that's pressed a button for me in our marriage and caused me to overreact and get really stressed is when we've been packing up to go away somewhere. And it was only as I thought about my own family background that I realised my father used to get us to organise everything down to the last detail the night before we were going anywhere. And if we hadn't done it, he'd get cross and stressed and shout at us, and we all felt like he was controlling us, and I really hated that as a child. And then I suddenly realised I was imitating his behaviour. And that recognition and talking it through with Nikki has helped me to be less stressed when we're packing up to go somewhere.
Change from our overreactions is possible, although it generally happens gradually. The process involves making ourselves vulnerable. It takes courage and requires self-awareness. If we're not aware of how our upbringing has affected us, we'll tend either to imitate what we observed growing up or react against it. It's only when we become aware that we have a real choice.
We need to look at our own reactions and ask, is that reasonable? Is that in proportion to the situation? Then, through talking about why we react as we do and forgiving those who've hurt us or let us down in the past, we can start to change.
I grew up as an only child, and my mum passed away when I was about 14, and then I had a very difficult relationship with my dad because he suffered badly with depression. But I think with that, a load of walls kind of went up for me. And so getting married was kind of this big thing of trying to let Andy in and even getting engaged. And I think that took a long time to really, for my walls to come down, for me to really trust you. And I think I would get very easily hurt by you. When he hurt me, it was like huge. So he'd say one small thing, but for me it was like a nuclear bomb. Like saying, oh, you shouldn't be late, you know. But like, why are you saying that about me? And I just take everything as a huge personal critique. And I think I'd had a slight expectation of, because a lot of people close in my life had maybe either passed away or had in some ways let me down, that there was that, for me, slight testing of him. Is he going to do the same? So I remember times when we'd fall out, and this was when we were dating, and I'd kick you out the house and he'd stay outside for like 2-3 hours. And I bet you eroded slowly just by being persistent, I think, being forgiving, being kind, being patient with me as I kind of processed all these things.
So I don't think we had like a light bulb moment when everything changed. I think it was probably like persistent conversations. Yeah. And like a slow breaking down of walls, a slow building up of trust.
For the next conversation reflecting on your upbringing, write down a situation in which you know you overreact. You'll see we've put an example in your journal. Then put down any reasons you're aware of for this overreaction.
Ask yourself if there's anyone you need to forgive from your past. Then show each other what you've put and tell your partner in what ways they could help you to avoid this overreaction. If overreactions are causing huge issues in your relationship, whether by causing you to attack your partner or to retreat and shut down, we'd encourage you to seek help.
We're now going on to look at how important it is to agree on our priorities if we're to build a strong marriage. Our priorities in life will be determined by our values, and it's our values that affect the choices we make. For example, our values affect whether we spend money on a holiday abroad or save money for getting a home of our own. Our values affect how much energy we devote to things like our work or leisure activities, to our family and friends, to developing our spiritual lives, to being involved in voluntary work and so on. Our values affect whether we seek as big a wage or salary as we can, or we opt for a lower standard of living and less stress, or we go for a vocational career.
In a marriage, a couple may well have very different personalities and develop different skills. We may come from different backgrounds and have a number of different interests, but having similar core values and an agreed set of priorities will enable a couple to build a strong marriage.
We want to suggest that you set aside time to discuss together what your priorities are, and then work out if you're living in line with those priorities.
Because if we don't set aside time to decide on our priorities, what we want to give our time and energy to, it is so easy to get swept along by life. And that was certainly happening to Nikki and me. And then we went away on a weekend about 1.5 years into our marriage, where an older married couple helped us to work out an order of priority for different areas of our lives.
And this order has been incredibly helpful to us for our decision-making ever since. Top of our list, we put our relationship with God because our shared faith is our highest value. Second, we put our marriage relationship as we recognize the need to give time to loving and supporting each other over and above every other relationship. Third, we wrote down children, if and when we had them. Fourth, we put our work and our studies. I was a teacher then, and Scylla at the time was at art college. And fifth, we put spending time with wider family and our friends, and our involvement in our church community.
And since then, we've discussed other values that are important to us, such as keeping fit and being creative. But what we realized on that weekend is giving priority to the people and values that matter most to us doesn't just happen.
Certainly, we've had to be flexible due to changes in our working life or our family, especially when we had young children or one of our parents needed more care. But we also had to be intentional about what we prioritized.
And we found that when we prioritize the most important relationships, our other relationships also benefit. And it works rather like a cascading fountain. So what you see is that there's an overflow from one row to the next. When we prioritize time with the most important relationships, what's below also benefits. And Nikki and I still find when the urgent things in life take over from what's most important, we need to go back to our list. And that helps us to say no to other people's requests and demands where we need to, in order to live in line with our priorities.
We now want to look briefly at 4 areas that will be affected by our values and our priorities. First of all, friendships. The boundaries of our relationships are redefined in the light of our marriage. Now, we don't want to suggest for a moment that we should cut ourselves off from others when we get married. On the contrary, marriages need a network of support from family and friends, married and single. And it's one of the hazards of today's society that married couples can all too easily get isolated.
But we do also need to be realistic and protect our marriage from any relationships that might threaten it, such as spending time with former boyfriends or girlfriends by ourselves, or going for a drink after work with a colleague of the opposite sex on our own.
Affairs often start with intimate conversations, as emotional unfaithfulness usually precedes sexual unfaithfulness. Scylla and I hear of an alarming number of affairs that start in the workplace or online. So, setting and agreeing clear boundaries is so important in terms of where and with whom we spend our time.
One of the things I take most confidence in is that we're very transparent about awkward situations that might arise. And I remember Stephanie went on a work trip to Kosovo, and She was out with some colleagues. But at the time, we had an Apple TV, right? And I don't know if Stephanie even knew, but the photos on the screensaver were synced to our iCloud account, right? So it would automatically upload photos from Stephanie's phone, and then those photos would display as the screensaver on our television, right? When it sort of, went dormant. And I was at home, and I had just gotten back from work, and the TV was on, and the screensavers were going, and up were popping these photos of Stephanie in this club with her friend and a random guy. And the photos went into sequence through the evening, and gradually, like, the buttons on the shirt of this guy came down throughout the night. And so I was sort of, I was piqued, by this. And Stephanie called me the next day, and she was like, "You would never believe the crazy evening we had." And she went on to talk about how this guy was essentially hitting on her on the bar. And she didn't even know I had seen these photos on the Apple TV, but the transparency and the honesty about that moment and saying, "Hey, this was a really awkward situation. And rather than hiding it from you, I'm going to be transparent and just tell you about it." That gave me a lot of confidence in our relationship.
We try not to do long periods of time away from each other. We try to, be wise, like go in, do what we got to do, get back.
But we also have built in a special way in which we meet each other when he returns back.
Yes, which is
let's just leave it at that.
My favorite.
I think another way we've protected ourselves is surrounding ourselves with healthy couples. It's so important for us to have relationships that are connected to our marriage, not me with the boys. How can we surround ourselves with healthy couples that now my relationship is connected to?
I think boils down to community, that we're not doing life alone.
The second area that will be affected by our values and our priorities is the value we place on children and family life. Many couples talk about having children, for all its hard work and expense, as the most rewarding and joyful activity they jointly undertake in life.
And you need to be sure that you've discussed this topic prior to marriage, and that your partner feels the same way about having children as you do. Otherwise, you could discover later on this fundamental difference between you in your values.
Some of you might have thought it strange that children were below marriage on the order of priorities that Scylla and I wrote down together early in our marriage. Putting children at number 3 is not to undervalue the gift of children, and it's not because children are less important, but because a healthy marriage contributes massively to a child's welfare and security. Children feel safe through their experience of a loving, stable relationship between those who are looking after them. And when so much time goes into looking after a child or children, the marriage can easily be neglected.
The third area that will be affected by our values and priorities is our work. Marriage isn't about competing with each other. It's not my career versus your career. Rather, our attitude should be, how can I help my husband or wife to fulfill the gifts and potential they have? You also need to talk about whether you both expect to carry on working full-time if and when you have a child.
It's a real challenge for many young couples to think about balancing time with a child and time at work. And I think that's one of the reasons why the couple really need to be a safe team together when they become parents. What your child most needs is you. Your child needs to know they matter to you, that they're special to you. It's like the parents are there as a safe haven for the child, and that makes the world a safer place for that child. That's where children grow emotionally. That's where children develop a strong sense of self. There, right in that drama. That's the one that matters the most. If you give children that, all the research says that they have the capacity to explore and find all kinds of other things for themselves. It depends on your priorities in life. And I think that's very difficult in the modern world because the modern world gets faster and faster. You can help each other be accessible, responsive, and engaged with your kids, which is what a kid needs. That's what a good love relationship is. And I think part of deciding to be parents is to understand that there are times when, yes, this task of being with your child is going to come first. And, hopefully you're going to support each other with that. So this is where a good marriage is the very best recipe for good parenting and a stable family.
The fourth area that will be affected by our values and our priorities will be the value that we place on spirituality. This area is around our core beliefs and how these are worked out in our day-to-day lives.
Exploring faith and spiritual issues and having open and honest conversations about what each of us thinks can draw us closer together as a couple. Part of the conversation should be around what you would each want to pass on to children. Would you expect to pray with them? Would you want to take them to a place of worship? Would you expect to read to them from a children's Bible?
And then it's important you know your partner's expectations for you as a couple. Do you expect to go to a place of worship together regularly? Would you like to pray together as a couple?
For Nikki and me, praying together is something that we have tried to do throughout our marriage as an outworking of our shared faith. Now, obviously, prayer is connecting with God, but it's also a way that we connect with each other and show support for one another. So we try to pray together each day, just for a few minutes. And we simply ask each other the same question: what can I pray for you today? And that helps us to know what's uppermost in each other's minds. And we then say a short prayer about what the other one has said.
Over the years, we've recognized we don't always feel like praying. But if we start by saying thank you to God, it changes our perspective and it helps us to see things more positively.
We've also discovered that praying together doesn't just happen. We have to be intentional about it, just as with our date night, and plan it into our day. But we know it is worth persevering, both because of the benefit for us as a couple and because we've seen that when we pray, things happen.
And we would say that praying together day by day is one of the most uniting, connecting things that we do. We've drawn a diagram to try to show how it works for us. You'll see at the top of the picture we've put God, with ourselves at the bottom two corners. And it works as a sort of a triangle, as we each look to God to receive and experience His love, His forgiveness, and a sense of His purpose for our lives. We've found we're better able to love each other.
Now, if you don't pray, you might consider another way of connecting with and supporting your partner every morning. You could simply ask each other, how can I best support you today? And then tell your partner if there's anything you're anxious about and if there's something that your partner could do to support you.
We want you to turn to the next conversation, working out your priorities. For Scylla and me, making a list of our priorities helped us agree on our values and live more in line with them. We want you to try to write a list of your top 5 priorities as a couple. Then put against each priority one way you would hope to live that out in your lives together.
Your list may look different to ours, so you'll see we've put some examples to help you to think through what your highest values in life are. And it'll probably take you longer than you have time for during this session, but we'd encourage you to make a start.
In concluding this whole course, we want to come back to this idea of marriage being an ongoing journey of discovery and adventure.
One significant difference between many couples is that one of you may tend towards what could be described as the more adventuring partner, while the other may be the more nurturing partner. The more adventuring partner usually enjoys having lots of people around. You may want to go out a lot or always have people in your home. Maybe you're highly entrepreneurial and constantly pursuing new ideas. You're always wanting to get involved in new things, and you probably like going to new places whenever you can. As the adventurer, you feel this urgency to make the most of all the possibilities that life offers, and you tend to focus on marriage itself as a joint adventure. Meanwhile, the more nurturing partner tends to see the marriage as a safe place to return to after whatever adventures or challenges life brings. You provide more consistency and routine in your relationship.
For you, the marriage and the marital home provide the emotional and physical resources to deal with the outside pressures. The nurturing orientation tends to prioritize one-to-one time. You value nights in, and you may take a more cautious approach to new activities. And you're very aware of the dangers of getting overextended.
You can see the difference between an adventurer and a nurturer at an airport. You see the adventurers as they're going into departures, excited about setting off for somewhere new. Whereas at arrivals, the nurturers are more excited about returning home. They love getting back to what's familiar.
It's important to note there's no gender correlation to either style. And we also want to stress that neither the adventurer nor nurturer mentality is better than the other, even if you feel your own preference is by far the best.
Actually, both make an important contribution to the relationship. The adventurers are really good at not allowing the marriage to stagnate and are more ready to take risks, while the nurturers are really good at not letting the relationship get overextended, and they bring more stability.
And we'll all be somewhere between the two extremes. And as a couple, we may be the same or very different. We may both be at one extreme or somewhere in the middle.
Over the years, Nikki and I have become more aware of each other's inclinations. I'm naturally more of the adventurer. I'm better at initiating change, and I'm not good with too much routine. I lose interest without new experiences. While Nikki is better at maintaining routine and will stick at something until it gets finished.
If as a couple you're very different and you value just one of these traits, resentment can quickly creep in. If the nurturing mentality dominates, over time the adventurer will begin to feel frustrated. They'll probably feel held back or resentful and complain that life is getting routine and boring. They may then disconnect and pursue their own adventures at the expense of the marriage. Whereas nurturers who are over-adventured will often suffer in silence for a time. They may feign interest in a sport or in endlessly seeking out new places just to please their partner, but they gradually feel more and more exhausted or overlooked or insecure.
As a couple, your responsibility is to value both the energy of adventure and the security of recovery.
When we first got together, it was very much, and I still feel this, I kind of like get Phil going and he just settles me down. So it's like we work together really, really well. So would you agree now?
It's fine, get me going.
So sort of like, come on, yeah, let's go into it. Because you are so laid back and...
What do you mean?
Even like, okay.
Where do I need to get going? Where do I need to get going? In terms of what?
Just you, love.
He likes adventure. He likes the unknowns because he's a dreamer, right? And I am
concrete,
very like on earth, and I need the known and the planning.
Yeah,
so I
interject
these like hows and whys, and he doesn't want to hear that. He just wants to have the freedom to dream, and so at times, I have to bite my tongue and maybe tomorrow tell him what I was thinking, right? And not like crush his dreams in the moment.
Sammy's so outgoing, a bit more on the shy side. He's so spontaneous, loves taking risks and loves trying new things. And I like to be in the comfort zone.
What I accept as laid back now, back then I'm like, come on, let's do
things. Let's get some stuff done.
This is like running a marathon. If you run as hard as you can at the beginning, by the end you'll be crawling through it.
But I'll make it.
他就是比较冒险，我就会在保险的情况下，
我的爱人如果这样讲说，我们快要晚点了，大概可能离火车开还有4个小时。如果我说快要晚点了，那真的快要晚点了，真的快要晚点了。
就是1分钟了。
G.K. Chesterton once said, "Everybody is looking for two things in life, adventure and security. Typically, people have to choose one or the other. Marriage has the potential to provide both, and every marriage needs to give enough space for both adventuring and nurturing. When you get these two forces working well in your marriage, marriage itself becomes one of life's great adventures."
So, we want you to have your final conversation of the course, adventurer or nurturer. Please look in your journal and mark with your initials where you think you and your partner each come on the lines between the extremes. It could be at one end or somewhere in the middle for each category. And discuss whether you tend more towards adventuring or more towards nurturing, and talk about how well you balance each other out. And then consider whether you need to increase the adventuring or nurturing in your relationship. Our own marriage has been an adventure that has far surpassed anything that we could have imagined. We're still discovering things about each other even after 42 years that we hadn't realized previously.
We look back with huge gratitude for all the experiences we've been through together, all the hard times that have taught us a lot, and all the fun we've had. And we continue to make plans for the future, not knowing what will come, but looking forward to navigating it together.
When as a couple, we use the tools that we've talked about on this course, such as talking and listening well, using each other's love languages, expressing our appreciation for each other, living out our shared values, we build a relationship of love that can weather even the strongest storm.
Our final reading is another passage from the love story in the Bible, the Song of Songs. Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death, its jealousy unyielding as the grave. It burns like blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench love, rivers cannot sweep it away. If one were to give all the wealth of one's house for love, it would be utterly scorned.
As we close, we'd like to pray that your relationship is a great blessing, not only to you, but also to many others. Lord God, we thank you that marriage is a gift of yours in creation and a means of your grace. We ask that you would bless each couple in the love that they have for one another. And we pray for those who are exploring marriage, that you would guide them about the future.
And for those who are engaged, we pray that they would build a partnership in marriage that will be a source of great joy and great encouragement to them, to their families and friends, and to many others. Help them to build a marriage that will be an adventure of love over a lifetime. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. It's been great having you on this course.
And we're so glad that you've taken the time to invest in your relationship.
We know these topics we've looked at and the conversations you've had will be invaluable to you and your future. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
You told people that.
Sorry.
Sorry for smacking that microphone. I realized after I did it.
I did that too.
Shouldn't to do that. Don't hit my mic.
Sorry.
My name is Josiah.
What, you surprised?
Don't push my mic.
Sorry.
There we are. Definitely you.
It's
definitely you, Tim. Go on, Tim. I felt I was being really vulnerable in that moment, Tim, as well.
Why are you showing?
Why are we so...
Can I get a job with you guys? Look, I just did that.
Sure, piece of cable.
Uh-oh.
Sweet.
Yeah, you just have to stress.
I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Powered through that.
Awesome.
Finished? Oh.
You made it.